Welcome to Corinne's Picks. I'm delighted to present a wonderful photographer for this episode. In this show, we explore the works of brilliant artists and their careers and their works of art. Today we have Theo Coulombe. Welcome to Corinne's Picks.
Thank you, Corinne. Glad to be here.
You know, I've been looking at your work for some time and really admiring your landscapes. I know
Thank
that
you.
your current projects have had to do with landscapes in New England.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about the work, the basic concept behind your work, and then we can get into some of your images.
Yeah, the work is really centered around the idea of finding spaces that reflect my emotional state at any one time, which is why I photograph fog, which is the big element that happens in most of the landscapes that I have. Because to me, fog represents this kind of area. It's like a liminal space. You're kind of moving through it and you're trying to find your way through it. Landscapes themselves came into my life as a photographer only about, many, many years ago. I was a park ranger, and that is where I started taking landscapes with a camera. But when I moved to the countryside, after leaving the city, I was living in the city, came up here to Sharon, Connecticut, and I just started photographing landscapes all over the place. And whenever it would be foggy out early in the morning, I would just head out. And to me, it was just me searching out areas that reflected my emotional state at that point. So,
You know, I'm finding it really interesting because, looking at your photography, I first thought, okay, atmospheric
mm-hmm.
images, right?
Yeah.
But you said it reflects your emotional state.
Yeah.
But my reaction to those images was emotional. I mean, they seem like they are almost alive, like it's a living entity, that it has emotion in those images.
Yeah, and the beautiful part about these landscapes is particularly with the fact that they're having these temporary atmospheric disturbances like this fog or these weather changes. All of that is like our internal emotional states. Like one moment we're sad, unhappy, next moment we're jubilant, and that landscape keeps changing. I will not stop and take a photograph of a beautiful day, for example, because that's not what I'm trying to reflect. And I'm not trying, the reflection that I see is just my personal reflection. It's not for anybody else, but the idea that you would look at it and get your own emotional landscape out of that is
I
something.
find it deeply moving because I'm also somebody who is not an urban person but reveres the countryside,
Right.
and does see trees and grass and plants and lakes as living.
Yeah.
Living.
Yeah, I think for me, there's also the aspect of art history and like Hudson River School painting, or all the romantic painters, or even like outsider art interpretations of landscapes. There's like all these elements. I think the Hudson River School, there was one of the painters said there's only so many elements that make a landscape. And I think he said trees, grass, water, rocks, sky, clouds. It's just this litany of like things. And I would think about that, and when I would go out, when I remember reading that, and I would go out and I'd start taking the photographs, and I'd be like, I would take photographs of just landscapes, and then I would say, this isn't enough, there's just something missing for me. It's like a beautiful morning, and I always go out very early to photograph because it's the quietest time, and it's the time where the night is changing over to day, and the animals are changing for the daytime, for the nighttime. But the going out in a foggy morning where everything is ephemeral, you're just moving through this like mist, and everything's changing constantly. I can drive down the same road 100 times and only find it once, find that vision once. I just posted an image on my website this morning that I photographed 2 months ago. And I use, when I say 2 months, it's because I'm using 8x10 film cameras. And the 8x10 camera, the film is literally 8x10 inches. Mm-hmm. And that allows me to get the detail that I need, while at the same time it's able to record these really beautiful tonal changes in the fog. And I feel like that is where I'm reacting to when I'm composing the photograph in the camera. I can look through the ground glass. I'm also dyslexic, so everything in the back of the camera, of an 8x10 camera, you're not looking through the camera, you're looking at the back of the camera with a dark cloth over your head. Everything is upside down and backwards. My life becomes easy and streamlined in that moment because I'm able to like see things without a problem for some reason. Yeah.
So here's the first image. You know, what I love about your work is that, I mean, you're using fog, but for me as a painter, it's very painterly. Like, it reminds me of the famous Afro-American artist Richard Mayhew. He does poured paintings with watercolor liquids.
Okay.
And the result reminds me of your photography because it's almost like different elements the bleeding of color into each other.
Yeah. This is an accidental double exposure. And when I said dyslexia before, this is a perfect example of my dyslexia. So when I take a photograph, I only allow myself one sheet of film because film's expensive. And I take the photograph and go, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And every container that holds the film for large cameras has 2 sheets of film. And I'm supposed to keep track of which one I've exposed and which one I haven't. And sometimes I forget. And there's indicators to indicate this on the holder for the film. But even if I use those properly, sometimes I forget. And I put the film holder back into the camera, pull out the dark slide, and re-expose that same sheet of film. So I call them FU apostrophe K images. And they're just FUKUP. That's what, and because they're messed up. And
well, you know, in art, they always say that accidents really sometimes lead to some really great,
I love them.
great advances.
Yeah.
And also your dyslexia, we struggle with in our art trying to get out of our head and trying to stop being conventional. So having dyslexia, it kind of protects you from yourself.
It does. And, I went through my whole childhood being told that I was broken, in my, in high school and junior high school and everything. You're broken, you're in special ed, blah, blah, blah. So it was always a struggle for me, especially in photography where things were supposed to be perfect, before the digital age especially. And I would have these people teaching me. And even when I first got to Brooklyn in the early 90s, I built a dark room. I had my 8x10 camera. I'd drive around the city and do these urban landscapes. And I would go into the dark room and process the film. And then all of a sudden, I turn on the light and look at it, and there'd be a little scratch. And I go, oh, I messed it up. And I can't use this. I embrace all those things now. So messing up, doing a double exposure like that one before is just exactly what I need to empower myself to do those kinds of things and to recognize what I'm doing. So in that way, everything that I learned as an analog photographer, and I was a digital photographer for a long time professionally, everything I learned as an analog photographer is now being used to its fullest extent because I'm able to allow myself to make those mistakes, which is the biggest reward for me. I feel like at 60 now, I'm actually making photographs that I really can get behind and that I believe in.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So let's see another image, and then I'd like to talk about some of the places that your art has been shown.
Okay.
Oh yeah. My God. This is exactly what I was talking about. This reminds me of the cover of the book Collecting Afro-American Art by... the image on the cover is by Richard Mayhew, and it's poured watercolor. It's liquids blending into, but it looks similar to this. I really just love this image.
Thank you so much. This is a view of Indian Mountain, and literally, this is what I do. I go around and I look for these things. This particular image, I really, really love. What happened was I knew the mountain was there because I'd driven past it so many times, and it was just pure fog. and I just pointed the camera, set up the tripod. The camera's large, and set up the camera. My car is there with the back open, and I just stood there and waited for the fog to clear. And while I was standing there, I saw a figure coming up the edge of the road, and this like 6 a.m. And this figure's coming up the edge of the road, and this guy walks up to me and goes, "I haven't seen a camera like that in 30 years." And I'm like, "Oh, are you a photographer?" And he said, "Yes. I used to be a photographer in New York City a long time ago, and then I became a bail bondsman." And we stood there talking and talking, and the fog started clearing and clearing. And then he's like, "Are you going to take a photo?" And I go, click, I just did. And the fog had just cleared to that point. And it was one of those moments where, for me, I keep my film in a bag in the back of the car, next to the camera, next to the tripod, and it stays out there all the time because you want your film to be tempered all the time to the temperature so that it doesn't fog itself when you pull it from a warm space to a cold space or vice versa. So it's always tempered. And sometimes I leave the film in the car too long, and it starts to get some condensation. So it almost looks like when you look at the surface of the print, and these are big, like 40 by 50 inches, you can see, it looks like rain that's coming through the fog sometimes. It's
So
beautiful.
where can people see your work? Where have you exhibited, and where are you exhibiting now?
The last exhibit that I had, oh my goodness, was at a gallery in, oh my God, in Salisbury, Connecticut. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the gallery.
Actually, we're going to go to a break in about 30
Okay.
seconds. So what is the name of your gallery again?
Standard Space Gallery, yes.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about your gallery and the kind of work you're exhibiting
Okay.
after the break.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
That's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
Analytics and empathy. That's how getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I'm more
than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
Welcome back to Corinne's Picks. We've been talking to Theo Coulombe,
Yeah.
brilliant, amazing photographer
Thank you.
and owner of
Standard Space Gallery.
Standard Space. Tell us a little bit more about your gallery, please.
The gallery, Standard Space Gallery, is a gallery that mostly shows mid-career artists, and we try to exhibit artists and feature artists that from, let's say, we try to feature artists that don't get featured enough. Like our last artist was a woman of 72 years old who put aside her art career for quite a long time to raise a family. And she got back into painting about 10 years ago, and she's amazing. Her daughter told me about her, and I went to visit her studio, and I was just blown away by her work. In fact, she's the first local artist we've shown at the gallery, and we're in the middle of, I mean, technically we're in the middle of nowhere, but we're not really in the middle of nowhere. The train station, the Harlem Valley line, is only 12 minutes from my front door, so I can be in Grand Central in 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But it's horses and cows, mostly, and the towns are far and few in between, and it's a very quiet life, but there's a lot of artists that live in the area. When I moved to the area after leaving Brooklyn, I found this building, and it's a storefront on the first floor and an apartment on the second floor. I live on the second floor, and the gallery's downstairs. It's an ideal life. It's not unlike the loft life I was living in Brooklyn for 23 years, where that was a horizontal life, and Sharon, Connecticut's a vertical life, so because I live over the space instead of next to it. But the gallery itself has had a lot of wonderful exhibits, and we try to feature curators or artist-curated exhibitions as well. I try to curate as little as possible. I did the first 7 or 8 shows. I still do two shows a year, but we have curators coming in. There is other artist residency programs in the area. Wasaic Project is one, and Shaw North Artist Residency, which are 2 nonprofits that are in the area. The artist Jasper Johns lives a quarter mile away in the town, and apparently when he passes away, hope that doesn't happen too soon, but he is 92, his property is going to become an artist residency as well, on the level of McDowell Colony or something like that. But I feel like it was the right thing to do. I lost my identity when I left Brooklyn, I felt like, because I was part of the business community and part of the art community. I had friends of mine owned the restaurants and the businesses, and it's where I lived, and I love Brooklyn deeply. And when I got out there, I really had to basically pull a New York thing and reinvent myself. So the only way to do that was to draw on my experiences as an artist, an art assistant and gallery worker in the 90s, and replug that in to this space that I had. All of a sudden, I bought the building, and I was immediately told by the town, you can't have a restaurant, you can't have a wine bar, you can't have a coffee shop. And I was like, that's okay, I'm opening an art gallery. I have a great associate director who immediately informed me after I hired her that I picked the dumbest form of making money in the world, but it's still been incredibly rewarding, and the people that I've met through it have been amazing. Douglas Turner is a curator that I've worked with, and I've known him personally as a friend. He has Architects of Tomorrow is his group, AOT Project Salon. He took a risk on me a long time ago, showing work, some of my earlier work in his gallery space on Hope Street in Brooklyn about 7 years ago. And since then, I have turned to him countless times to introduce more artists to the area. And what we like to do is not just be a local-centric space. We want to be a New York scaled place. So just this year, we became a member of NADA, the New American Art Dealers Association, and we're very, very proud of that. We can't afford to go to the art fairs yet because they're very expensive to attend, but we're aiming for it. We've had several artists, Adam Ekstrom of Ghost of a Dream, which is an art duo that are based up there now in Wasaic. He curated a beautiful show where we had artists like Mel Chin in that exhibition. It was a group exhibition between 13 artists. They had to make 16 complete portfolios.
Wow.
And rather than anybody making a profit off of the show, each artist got a complete portfolio.
But before I want to get back to those shows, but I want to make sure I get through some of your images.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm
okay with that.
I want the audience to really see this work.
Yeah.
So can we have the next image?
Oh, yeah. That's looking from Taylor Road into Millerton Valley Road. I love this image. This was driving up the hill, look in the rearview mirror and go, that's it, pull over. I do everything from the car. I don't walk anywhere up there. And it's been a health problem for me. But literally, I got this image, and to me, this encapsulates everything. This is like a moment of dark rejoicing.
Yes.
Because you have this large tree on the right-hand side that's casting this shadow over anything. This is the whole thing when you have self-doubt and or imposter syndrome. You're always questioning everything you're doing, but you have this glorious kind of landscape in the background with these layers of light and shadow and these trees. And then when you actually see the prints up close, the detail in the grass that's rendered because of the format size of the camera is very sharp. So you see every single blade of grass, any kind of drips of water or dew, and it's just an amazing thing. Funny story about this image. I submitted this to a group chat about large format photography, and somebody emailed back to me and said, you know, this image would really be great if you got rid of the tree. And I was like, you're missing the whole point of the image. And then when I wrote that back, he sent back a cropped image of my own image of just the gradations in the background.
Well, actually, what I like about it is that you have to take a minute to really look at perspective, like
Right.
to figure out what I'm looking at in terms of, is it just a flat plane, or are they like the distance between each ring of fog?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's
terms of-
ambiguous, and that's
yeah.
what makes it a perfectly ambiguous. It's like that's the whole thing about these liminal spaces, and I've been really diving into this kind of like you're walking down a passage almost. You're seeing down a passage, and the choices aren't clear yet. You're going, it's even as simple as when I get out of the car, am I going to make this photograph, or am I just going to take a snap with my iPhone and say, okay, I've got an idea of it, or am I going to go that extra mile to set up this tripod, this 8x10, take the meter readings, figure out what the exposure is going to be, and then all of these things that go into it. And I love that kind of inner dialogue that I'm having, because I'm trying to figure out if it's worth it. I'm trying to figure out if I'm worth taking the photograph.
If you
in
have
a
to
way.
just snap
Yeah.
an iPhone, it doesn't feel like you're creating the other. It's almost like, I'm somebody who's a big fan of AI art, but it's not. It wouldn't be satisfying for me because I like the process of me doing it
Yeah.
myself.
Well, I like the old analog process that I'm putting into it, and it isn't about the analog. It isn't about the cameras and like the gadgets and stuff. I'm not the first person to walk to talk about that stuff. Digital, I have a high-res digital camera that I can employ to take that same photograph, but what it comes down to is what I'm seeing is worth the investment in taking that chance. And that's that kind of liminal space. And that's what I love the fog, because it's going to change in a second. It's going to burn off in a second. Like, I've stopped and started setting up, and then I get everything's ready, and I look up and everything's gone. And it's just a perfect, beautiful day all of a sudden, and it's not worth taking the photograph. And I don't see the value in taking that photograph. I have taken those photos, and I have a lot of them.
Okay, so can we see the next
Yeah.
image, please? Oh my God.
Yeah, this is from Sharon Station Road, looking east, and it's early in the morning again.
Oh my
It's just
God.
driving. I was on my way to teach a class because I was teaching photography for a little while, and I literally saw this to my left, and I had to pull over and take the photograph. It was like the perfect opportunity, and this is another opportunity. Just moments before, that fog was even further into the image, but the fact that you can see those reflections, and to go for these foreground elements are incredibly important to everything that I do in my photographs. So those foreground elements are like personalities that are hanging out in the image, like the
Okay, so
shape of the tree.
this is very painterly. I mean, I love that aspect of it. I want to get to the next two. Can I have the next image, please?
Oh,
my
yeah.
God.
Okay, so you went to painterly, and the one comment that's constantly used is painterly, or they look like paintings. And to me, that's absolutely perfect. I love that. To me, it's the deepest form of compliment. This painting for me there's a German painter, Anselm Kiefer, and he would do these big fields all the time with photo emulsion and sand and not albumin, but asphaltium and hay. And whenever they're displayed in museums, there would be like a little line in front of them because things are constantly falling off the paintings. But they would always represent these fields. And I'm pretty sure the fields are supposed to be looking east into the vastness of like Ukraine and places like that. But they're always like these semi-cultivated or fallow fields that are...
But this one seems almost like social commentary because I see the dry brush, and it almost seems symmetrical. Like they were, is that grape plantains or was that a?
No, it was. I think it was corn. It was definitely corn because the
Okay.
local farm is a dairy farm, and in the distance, in the fog line, you can see the trees on the edge of the field, and the fog is just like creating these layers of darkness and lightness, even in the fog. But when you see the actual print, all of the stubble and grass is covered with frost.
Okay,
So
can we
it's
see
very cold.
the last painting, please? Oh,
Oh
wow.
yeah, yeah. This is looking from Doug Road toward Mudge Pond. We have a pond called Mudge Pond. It's where everybody swims, where we live. It's our swimming hole, and that's an early morning photo, and that is the moon up there, getting ready to set. And this is one of these images where, when you're looking at the foreground, it becomes painterly. Because even though the detail is being rendered, everything is melting into each other. So you see all the blades of grass, but they're all melting into each other, which is really, with these really subtle tonality shifts from blade of grass to blade
Well,
of grass.
some of it is subtle, kind of blended, but that saturation of some of the green part. I mean, some of the saturation is very intense too.
Yeah, this is more intense than it actually is in real life. The beautiful thing, if you were to actually see the print is actually a little bit more subtle. The thing is with shooting film, which I derive a lot of gratification out of, is its ability to record color is limited. So traditional film, analog film, has can only do, like, you know how monitors say, you know, millions of colors, thousands of colors, tens. Film can do like hundreds of colors, or maybe like 500 colors, whereas like digital photography can do millions of colors. So it has this limited latitude of rendering color. And when I know that, and I know how to shoot the film to like take advantage of that, and then I take the film after it's been processed. My lab is in Manhattan, and they process the film, they give it back to me, I scan it.
You know what? I think we've run out of
Oh, no.
time. That means we have to do a part 2.
Okay,
You
we'll
have to
do
come
a
back
part
and do a
two.
part 2. But thank you so much for coming to Corinne's Picks. And
Corinne's
I
Picks,
just want to
all
talk
right.
about your art some more and see more images.
That was fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming
I really
today.
appreciate it. Yeah, cool.
Okay, thank you.